千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. So here, I want to take everyone through some illustrations on the Tao of Justice, so you can see the difference in the way that the ancient sages thought of this concept of righteousness. So first, from the Tao perspective, you see it on the left, the Tao represents natural balance, whereas you, the human being, when you act on behalf of nature, on behalf of the Tao, to enact justice, to do justice, you may be tipping the scale. Let's see how the ancient sages saw this. So the Tao is divine justice. It flows naturally. It comes from everyone sooner or later. In modern times, we may look at that and say, well, that's karma. That's the karmic mechanism. Okay, fair enough. So in this particular chapter, 38, it's talking about high righteousness. What is that? That is you, me, we, us. We take justice into our own hands and act with specific agenda. So law enforcement, the legal system, the courts, all of the things that we have set up, we're specifically intending to do that, to take justice into our own hands, as citizens of a country and act with a specific agenda. So remember, it isn't necessarily a good or bad thing. This is just the nature of it. Okay, so in the Daodejing, it describes divine justice as the heavenly net. It uses the metaphor of a net that catches everything to describe divine justice. And you'll see that in Daodejing 73, chapter 73. What it says is that the heavenly net is loose, but does not let anything slip through. It's a net. The heavenly net is something that we cannot see, but it does not let anything slip through. So what happens when you want to take justice into your own hands, perhaps not as a society or community, but as a vigilante, then you are basically trying to take the place of the net to do the catching yourself. What can happen then is that there's every possibility that you can get tangled up as a result, which is why it's important to realize vigilante, like the Batman, is actually a criminal. You might say, but Batman catches criminals. Yeah, but Batman as a vigilante is a criminal acting contrary to the law, taking the law into his own hands. It's a complex topic, everybody. But this reality that when you try to do that, you may get tangled up yourself. In order to catch criminals, you may end up doing criminal things. This is the reason why Lao Zi always recommends minimal actions with a lighter touch, to do just enough and not one iota further. So that's one view of the Tao of Justice. So here's another one. In chapter 74, Lao Zi uses the metaphor of the master executioner. So the master executioner, again, is very similar to karma, our concept of karma. The master executioner is that which brings an end to everything, everyone that goes against the Tao. So in other words, someone who lives by violence will likely die by violence. So the master executioner, like the heavenly net, is ever present and brings justice about. Sometimes it can manifest as a communal, a societal justice system. Now, if we try to take matters into our own hands, though, same problems occur as when we try to catch in the place of the heavenly net. What do I mean by that? Well, in that same chapter, 74, it says we can hurt ourselves when we resort to killing criminals. When we take the place of the master executioner, we can inadvertently harm ourselves. It's the paradox at the heart of capital punishment. That paradox goes like, killing is wrong. Therefore, we're gonna kill you for killing, and therefore do the same wrong that you have done. What? That's the paradox. That's what Lao Tzu was pointing out. So the ideal Tao-oriented justice from the perspective of Lao Tzu would not necessarily include capital punishment. This was a shock to me as a younger man when I first came to that realization after reading the Daodejing several times and fully understanding the message Lao Tzu was trying to convey. So there's more. Lao Tzu uses another metaphor called the Great Carpenter. So it's just a coincidence that this has similarities to Christianity, but Lao Tzu uses that metaphor in the same chapter, chapter 74. The Great Carpenter works on the construction project known as reality. And that's because when you're a carpenter and you're working with wood, you're cutting pieces of wood down to size to make it fit reality, which is the Tao. So in order to do that, you have a whole bunch of different tools, or the great carpenter, the metaphysical carpenter, that is the Tao, that is karma. Now, if we human beings, not possessing the characteristics of karma or the Tao, we try to take on the tools of the great carpenter to cut wood ourselves, and that's a metaphor for capital punishment, then we can cut ourselves when we try to use the tools of the great carpenter. That's a metaphor for the bullet that you see just above that. We can hurt ourselves inadvertently when we resort to killing animals. So altogether, the bottom line is this. What we're seeing now is often the consequence of taking attached actions. So I think you have a flavor of what it means, what the Tao perspective on justice is by now. It's very karmic in flavor, as you can see, and it also advocates minimal intervention, minimal interference, but it doesn't go so far as to say do nothing whatsoever. Just taking minimal unattached actions, just enough to accomplish the goal and not one bit further. That's the Tao perspective on justice. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.